Casey Gray here, and you are watching another episode of the Conscious Builder Show. On today's episode, we have Corey Diamond. Corey has more than 2 decades of experience leading social change organizations focused on engaging people to take action on critical environmental and social issues. He was previously the COO and partner of a global consulting firm, Realized Worth, a company focused on the design and implementation of corporate volunteering and giving programs. And he also spent 10 years helping to lead Summerhill, a national firm focused on engaging the public on energy efficiency behaviors. Now he is the executive director of Efficiency Canada, and we get into a lot of stuff here. So policy is a big thing, right? Policy change takes a long time. And this is what Corey is focused on. This is where we all need to come together to support and be a part of something and can make a big change. And Corey gets into all of that and what he's doing with Efficiency Canada and what you can do to get involved and what's important. What do we need to be thinking about moving forward? This is something that goes beyond ourselves, right? This is something that we need to do together. It's not something that we can do alone. It's not something that he can do alone. He needs your support. He needs our support. So I hope that you listen to this episode and you take action and you sign up. It doesn't cost anything. There are ways to get involved and be as simple as a click of the mouse, really, and you can make a change. So if you're wondering on how you can make a difference and how you can provide a more efficient Canada, you can do that through Efficiency Canada, and it takes as little as 10 seconds to sign up and get involved. And you'll learn more about that as part of this. But anyways, I won't hold you up anymore. Enjoy this conversation with Corey Diamond. Corey, thanks for being on the show.
Awesome to be here. Thanks for inviting me. This is going to be fun.
Yeah. You have, I believe a very important role that is really voluntary to some extent. Right? A lot of this stuff that people are doing in this sector doesn't need to be done, right? And that's kind of what I feel like we're going to get into is policies and how can we have change. And it sounds like you're kind of a catalyst for a lot of the change that ultimately needs to happen. We can't wait anymore. We need to start making a lot of drastic changes in terms of helping the environment, which we'll get into. But before we get into all of that, you've been in the social change area, I don't know if you call it that, but in that world for over 2 decades, from what I understand. I'm curious to know how you got into that. Where does that interest come from?
Yeah. So, well, we can go all the way back to the beginning. A young 17-year-old planting trees in the Rouge Valley and kind of having a sort of an epiphany moment around what this all means, and quickly kind of decided I'd go to University of Waterloo and take environmental studies. And when I was there, I was really kind of introduced to this concept by a couple of professors at the time around kind of the role of the interconnected role between business and policy, government policy, and then obviously in the environment. And it was still very new in Canada. So I always kind of had that bug. And my first big kind of real job was at a company called Summerhill, which is a leader in energy efficiency implementation. They do a lot of work with utilities, and I spent about 10 years there, and we really learned about how to affect behavior change. The goal was to try and get people to make better choices and to do the types of things that would help them reduce energy use at home. And there was always this little thing around in the back of our heads around the ultimate goal wasn't to turn on 100% of the public to switch out light bulbs or install insulation and things like that. The goal was to get to a critical mass enough where then you could come in with a policy at the end and just make it the norm. And if you can kind of transform that market over time through, spurring behavior change, eventually policy would come in and say, you know what, this is actually really good for Canada and for everyone. Let's make it easy for everyone to adopt. So I've done that. And then I also took a bit of a detour and did some work around working with large corporations around engaging people to get active in the community. And so I learned a lot about kind of behavioral psychology and behavioral change and what it takes to make, good social change. It's really all I know how to do. So it's kind of like you do it at the beginning of your career, you kind of get good at a little niche, and then you just keep going. So I haven't thought about doing anything else.
Well, that's great. Because obviously you found what you're good at, and what you enjoy doing, which is important. Um, but now, when you were planting trees, what even made you want to go and plant trees at that point?
Well, like every good story, it starts with a love interest, and at the time in high school, it was a girl invited me, and I just decided to go. I knew nothing about it or anything. It was just kind of a fun day to go out, and why not,
Change the path
and
of your entire life.
there you go. There you go. And so yeah, that's the story. I mean, we're still in touch, but she didn't become the the love of my life later on.
Well, she kind of she guided you towards the other love of your life, which is your work, right? So that's great to hear. That it's amazing when you can go back to like a certain point in time where kind of everything was kind of like that tipping point, right? Where then you realize that, all right, this is the direction that I'm heading.
Yeah.
So that's great. So now you're with Efficiency Canada, and what exactly is Efficiency Canada? What do they do?
Yeah. So essentially, what we are is we're a research organization based at Carleton University. And we do three basic things. First thing is obviously research and policy analysis. So we're trying to understand, what are the best policy levers for Canada to pull to ensure that energy efficiency has, we're reaping all the potential and the value and benefits of energy efficiency in Canada. So it's very government policy focused. But we thought if we're just doing research and we're just kind of creating papers and they sit on a desk somewhere or on someone's computer, we're not going far enough to get the action we need. So we do two other things as much as we do the research. The first is communication, and that's really trying to kind of tell the story of energy efficiency as a strong sector in and of itself. That it's a huge part of Canada's climate commitments, but it's also a huge part of Canada's economic development and job creation strategy. So we like to tell the stories of the people behind it, people like yourself, Casey. And then the second thing we do to kind of advance the research is we really are trying to organize and mobilize the sector and make sure that we're telling our stories to politicians, to elected officials and policymakers so that they hear it and we're making enough noise. And so we do a bit of grassroots activism to try and organize people and get them excited about this. So when there's a policy window opening, we use our research to say this is the type of policy you should adopt. We then communicate the heck out of it, and then we try and get as many people to tell their elected officials that this is important. And that kind of model is starting to work, and we're starting to try and we are seeing change and a lot more interest in energy efficiency across Canada, both at the federal and provincial levels.
Yeah. So when you say energy efficiency, like what exactly do you mean by that? Are we talking buildings? Are we talking automobiles? Like what
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, for us, when we talk about energy efficiency, it's essentially, having the same things that we want, but having, doing it with much less input. So, all of us want to have heat and warmth and we want light and we want to watch Netflix without a breeze going across our ankles. We want to have this kind of comfort. And there's no reason to have those kinds of things while having all the energy being wasted. And so when we think about energy efficiency, we're thinking about it through that lens. Our focus so far has been around three kind of key areas. One is around what we call zero carbon buildings. So really a big focus around, energy efficiency in the built environment. We're also putting more emphasis on what we're calling kind of a net zero and productive economy. So thinking about kind of the industrial processes and how we make stuff and making sure that the inputs into that are obviously the most efficient. And then the third area is around, what we call meaningful careers. So the first two things don't happen unless we actually have enough people to do that work. And so we spend a lot of time trying to kind of develop the workforce and the skills so that the first two things can happen.
Yeah. So all right, my wheels are spinning. I got lots of questions. How do I organize my thoughts here? So what I found, because in business, is that we're pretty niche, but we're doing a few projects. Like we're a small company. I always tell people do whatever you can. Every little action counts, right? And we're doing our part, which can look big to some others and be very small compared to others as well. One of the things that I've I guess struggled with or trying to understand is we can only deliver what people are asking for a lot of the time.
Right.
I feel like they don't always know what they're asking for. That's a different topic altogether. But if people don't know, they don't know what to ask for. So
Right.
I feel like that's the educational part, and that's where we put a lot of our effort into. So how do we start making these big changes that we need to do? And my next question is going to lead into like, what are these changes that we need to make, or what do we have to make as humans really to save ourselves to some extent, right? I want to go there, but how can we get people to actually want these things? Because you kind of touched on it. We don't want to feel like we're sacrificing, right? We want to be able to watch Netflix and have all lights on and cook and, have fun, go out in a boat or whatever it may be, right? Like all these things that aren't right now necessarily good for the environment. But how can we get people to want to care?
Yeah. No, it's a really good question. I've spent my whole life trying to figure that out. But I think there's different phases of it. And maybe we can use like what you do around home building and things like that as a good example. You as a business are carving out a niche where you're trying to figure out, how you can provide a product that people want and see the extra value in it. And for a long time in the energy efficiency sector, we thought that the way to do that was to tell people that they're just going to save money. So, hey, save energy, save money, and people would just make the right decision based on that. And over time, that's largely been debunked. I mean, it is one of the reasons, but people make decisions every single day that have like the dumbest economic, foundation.
It makes sense in our mind, right? So
yeah, but like, people buy $4 coffees when they can make a pot of coffee at home for pennies, and so it's just like the human brain doesn't necessarily work that way. But what does work is the types of things that connect to our values, and the things that connect to our values are becoming more and more prevalent in our lives. And things like having a safe and comfortable and resilient home for children is, leading the way across the country as far as why people would make these decisions. Other things like, climate change are really starting to take hold, especially with younger people who are really nervous and scared about the crisis moment we're in. So we got to appeal to that. But at the same time, we have to send a signal to the marketplace that this is the direction things are going, long-term steady signal. So in your case around home building, we can do all the kind of marketing to try and get those kind of early adopters on board. But ultimately, the goal is to create a building code that this is the way things are done no matter what. And eventually, every single home that's built is going to be built at that level. And so we have to kind of do both those things in parallel, because you're never going to get 100% of the public to kind of come on side. People make irrational economic decisions. And so we're going to try and get all the good people on side. We're going to develop the workforce to do it. And then ultimately say, you know what, this is just the way we do things now. And we have to get there, as fast as possible. So kind of both things kind of have to work together. So any policy, any decision governments make need to have both those ends in mind. So it's not just a grant program where we're going to encourage people to kind of take action. It's a grant program with an eye towards the long-term kind of structural shifts that we need. And somewhere in between those two things is where we're going to kind of find this promised land.
Yeah. And I think that's adds another complexity to it. Is you almost need a politician to say, this is you need people to in that world to say, this is what we're going to do. This is what we stand for. And by saying that, they're going to maybe not win the election, for example. Right. So I've always been, it's like, it's easy to say, yeah, the government needs to do these things. It's harder for the government to actually take action because they just all want to get voted and they have to check off boxes on their list. That's a whole world that I don't necessarily completely understand. But I know that there's a lot of moving parts to it.
Right.
Are you working with the government? Like how do you make noise? You mentioned that you make noise. Is this data that you're now getting and then you're giving to people and saying like, look, this is something that you can use on your platform when you're going to run or whatever it may be?
Yeah. I mean, we do all those things. So, last election, our advice and our program ideas and policy ideas were in pretty much every major party's platform. So we try and inform that. But really what it comes down to is political influence and political power. And we're nowhere near the influence, let's say, that, Greta Thunberg and the Fridays for the Future and the kids that are out striking every Friday and took to the streets last year. But if you think about the kind of political power that creates, it's now impossible for a party in Canada to get elected without strong climate leadership. It's been proven that way. So, and the only way that happens is when people stand up, come together, build coalitions, and create that kind of impetus. And then what you were saying earlier, well, wouldn't it be nice if politicians could then like kind of see that and, still get elected? Well, I think that's actually happening. And I really do believe that is because they do their polling every week, and Canadians are holding strong that they believe that we need to deal with this issue first and foremost, up there with economic and health interests, et cetera. And all of that can happen together. And the beauty of energy efficiency is it kind of touches on all those things, right? We want to have, a more productive economy. We want to be more competitive. I want to save money. I also want to be healthy, and I also want to be safe. I also want all these other things. But ultimately, if we don't come together as an organized sector, then our voice is drowned out by all the other special interests that are asking government to do things. And we know that there's over 400,000 people in Canada who are doing energy efficiency work. That is a huge number of people. 1 in 50 Canadians is somehow related in helping us build better buildings and to help the economy be more efficient. That is a big number. And imagine how loud that voice is when you're telling government that one of the ways you can get elected is by having really strong, consistent, sustained policies related to this. So that's what we're trying to do. And when we tell government about the kinds of policy advice that we have, we really try and also back that up by saying, hey, you want to talk to someone who's done this? You want to talk to people who are hiring people who can't find people fast enough, who are growing jobs in communities across the country? You want to come and cut a ribbon like somewhere? We can hook you up with that.
Yeah. So I want to go back to construction now. So that's all great to hear, by the way, that, it sounds like we're heading in the right direction. Obviously we still have a long ways to go. In the construction world, there's pushback, for example, from builders, not because they don't necessarily want to do it, but it's because they feel like they can't sell it. That's what I get from it anyways. Right. So it's like, if you increase the building code, if you make the building code better, and what I always like to say is remind people that, remember, the building code is the worst house you're allowed to build by law.
Yeah, that's right.
So if you want
the floor, not the ceiling.
Yeah, exactly. So if nobody wants to go out and get like the worst car, for example. They spend money, right? Because we're not rational, and many will buy the more expensive car just because it looks better. But when it comes to efficiency and health and comfort and housing, people are still kind of looking at the outside. They want the granite countertops. They want the nicer stone on the outside. They want the nicer looking window, not necessarily the better performing window, sort of thing, right? So, and that's not for everybody. That's not necessarily people that come to us, but that's what builders are saying, right? If I increase the performance of my home, the guy across the street that's selling his house for $5,000 less will sell it before ours because they look the same, even though one's going to feel different. And you'll see the difference on your bills, which is not what we're selling anymore. It's looks the same. And the other thing too is that if you increase the building code, housing costs go up, right? So now people feel like they can't get as much for their money.
Right.
In my opinion, more, but anyways. So how do we navigate all of that? What are your thoughts? And
a few things I think of. So one is on the upfront costs. Certainly, there's a portion of the public that is interested in paying that extra $5,000, and there's a large portion that's not. And so one of the things we've been advocating for around on the renovation side of existing homes that I think could equally be as powerful on the new build is what we're calling kind of like a concierge, like somebody who's basically there and hand holding you through all of the ways that you can save on that building, right? There's probably an incentive or a grant from your local utility. There's probably financing that you can get for that extra bit. There's probably support you can get from your mortgage. There's other things you can do that help offset that $5,000 on your big investment that you're about to make. But people don't have the time or knowledge or kind of, help to do that. And we've always been calling for like somebody to almost act as that concierge who can pull together all these various different things, do all the paperwork that's available, and then just get that done. And so I think that could definitely help to say to someone, look, it's going to cost 5K more, but I'm going to take care of all these other things that are going to get you that 5K back or even more. And then also explain to them, but by doing this, the increased cost is more than offset by the reduction in your operating costs over the lifetime of the home. And also, obviously the other values around comfort and things like that. So that's that piece. On the construction side and increasing the cost of homes, I agree that, I mean, that's definitely an issue that's happening. But the way building codes are kind of evolving is that they're kind of evolving by steps, and BC has been the first to kind of adopt this what's called the BC Energy Step Code, where a municipality or a community can kind of say, we're at step 2 or step 3 now. Over time, we're going to get to 4 and 5, which is kind of a net zero energy ready home. We're not going to do it right away because there's a lot of things we need to do in the meantime to kind of make that happen. And that includes all the training, capacity building, and things to get the construction people on side. But the other thing is what they're doing in BC is they're connecting that code directly to economic policy, because they realize that if we're going to kind of step it up and get to that point, we need to make high efficiency windows in BC. We need to make the components for heat pumps in BC. And they're starting to then create almost a local economy around those products, which eventually, by the time we get to the step 4 and 5, brings the cost of those products down because more people are buying them. You're creating them locally. You're creating jobs and economic development locally in BC. So together and commensurate with the workforce capacity and dealing with, all the various different construction trades to get them on side, we need to create a retrofit economy and a green building economy around it, so that what we're seeing is kind of more of the local kind of job creation that comes from it. And then ultimately a reduction in costs of those types of products, which should then create a level playing field for, status quo today.
Yeah, and hopefully not the shortage that we're seeing on everything. I was having an interesting conversation with a friend yesterday, and ABS pipes running out and sheet metal's running out. Lumber's like 4 times up right now. Like it's just crazy, all the materials. So he's like, what happens when we literally run out of these materials? I don't know.
I have no idea. I know. And definitely COVID has definitely impacted that, and the boom in renovation and everything is really hampering that. And, we've also been saying there's a greener homes grant program coming from the federal government. And what we're saying is, provide an incentive off a high efficiency window, but more importantly, or as importantly as that, work with the Windows manufacturers to retool and make sure that that it's easy for them to manufacture these windows here. And I think that, they're again doing that in BC and providing incentives directly to the manufacturers to kind of, make that easy shift for them over time, which hopefully, as the crunch kind of disappears, that we're able to satisfy the demand domestically.
Yeah, that's it's great to hear. There's lots of good things happening. I like the fact that you mentioned like renovations, because that's the biggest part. There's always going to be more. There's never going to be more new houses than old houses, right? There's always going to be more and more and more older houses that need to be renovated and improved, especially because ones that were built to like Energy Star standards years ago are now below minimum building code, right? Because it continues to increase. Which is another topic we can leave for another day, right? And codes, how, if code increases, then other things need to increase too. But there's also another program, you might know of this, but they're actually working on a program, as I understand it, that you can borrow money to improve your home, but it stays linked to the home, not to the owner. So when you sell it, that loan stays with the property, like almost on the property tax level.
That's right. Yeah. It's called PACE. So it's property assisted clean energy. Yeah. And not every municipality has it, but there's a big push. The Federation of Canadian Municipalities is making it available, some funds available to municipalities to do it. You do need some enabling legislation from the province, which is happening around across the country. But it's a brilliant idea, because what it does is it eliminates that kind of the longer payback that could come from deeper retrofits. If you're thinking, well, I'm not going to be here in 10 years, am I really going to install these solar panels? Is the payback going to be there? Well, essentially exactly what you said. You borrow the money and it's tied to your property taxes. So you pay it off through your property taxes every month. And then at the same time, is if you do decide to move, that amount stays on the property taxes for the next person. So that way you kind of avoid that issue of taking off before you reap the full economic benefits of it. The other cool thing about PACE is that they do help with a lot of that, as I was saying earlier, around the concierge. Most cities that are doing this are really kind of hand holding as well. And so there's just an extra layer of support for people who are trying to do, deeper retrofits.
Right. Which cities are doing it right now?
It's happening in Toronto, city of Halifax. I believe BC is just starting with a number of cities. And then I mentioned the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. What they've done is they provided 2 levels of grants to cities. One is to just study it and figure it out. How can we actually implement this in our city? And then the second is actually, funds, capital that you can start to deploy on a revolving basis, because it's basically a loan. So if you have a pot of money as a municipality, you can lend it out through the property taxes, but then you're getting it all back. So then you can lend it out to the next person. So it's kind of a revolving grant fund that they've provided. So it's really starting to ramp up. PEI just actually passed enabling legislation, so we're hoping to see it in Charlottetown and Summerside, really soon as well.
Nice. Now we've talked a lot about the construction side, but now what about business? Are you guys doing anything to help business? Like if there's a business, could be any field really, who wants to become more efficient or wants to produce a product more efficiently, are you doing any work on that front or helping support them?
Yeah. So we have, basically what we're trying to do is connect. We know that the more energy efficient activities and the growth of these businesses doesn't occur unless there's a steady policy environment for it to happen. So if we know where we're going, and certainly this government's been really ambitious and calling for net zero emissions for Canada by 2050, and hopefully very soon passing legislation that basically locks in those targets every 5 years and makes it legally binding for the government of Canada to do that, together with other kinds of policies like building codes and other things, sends a signal to the market that this is where we're going. And if you're a business and you're working in an environment that has a steady, consistent policy that's pushing in that direction, then your business can make decisions and investments based on that. So we don't spend the time business to business helping them out, but what we're trying to do is create that steady, consistent policy environment to make it really exciting place to be for a small business in this space. So, take your business as an example. If we're successful in kind of enabling the types of policies at the federal, provincial, municipal levels, then you're working in an environment that is supportive for the types of things that you're trying to do around sustainable building. So that's how we do it. And then the second part of that is, well, it's kind of like the same end of the 2 ends of the same stick, is that only happens if the governments know that there is a concerted, collective, organized sector of companies who are demanding that, right? They're only going to listen to what is out there. So the thing we try and do is say to most of any small business and energy efficiency who's doing this kind of work, is say, come and join us and join this collective of organizations, because if we're together, we have a louder voice. That makes that stable policy environment much more, feasible or that we actually see it happen.
So when you say join us, what does that mean?
Well, it's a number of different levels. The main thing is just join us and give us your email address, because what we do is we do these kind of mobilizing campaigns that take about 30 seconds to one-click letter to your elected official and things like that. We send hundreds of thousands of letters to elected officials across the country and make it so easy for you. So if you just join us, we're not going to spam you. We're not going to ask you to do anything, but once a month you may get a newsletter with some action alerts, and you may be interested in doing that. And then on top of that, that, we do have what's called an allies program. So we do have almost 50 companies and organizations across the country that support us financially, anywhere from $500 to 15,000. And they just, join us and say, look, if you guys are successful in getting these types of policies happening, then our organization is going to be successful and our business is going to be successful. So there's an opportunity to do that. Either way, if you want to join us, as an ally or not, we'll still help you out and support you and get you to send a letter to your MP, no matter what.
Yeah, so people can go to efficiencycanada.org. I definitely recommend people sign. Like this is one of those things. It's like, what can I do today? Like I can't have a big impact. This is one of those things. Literally, when we were chatting before we hit record, I filled it out. I think it took me 10 seconds.
There you
now
go.
I'm on the list, right? And if I get an email that resonates with, and I want to support it, which I'm sure I'm going to want to support the majority of things that get sent out, then I can sign that letter. You're saying basically there'll be like a one-click option sort of thing, and help, join the masses. Me alone, I can't do very much, but when I join 12,000 other people or whatever it may be, then we can have create a big wave. Right?
Absolutely. And we've heard it from elected officials before. I mean, like, think about it. Well, think about your own attention span, how hard it is to focus on one thing in the middle of a day with all of your responsibilities and kids and everything. And now think of an elected official, a politician who's working 12, 14 hours a day and being bombarded with everything. If they hear about it consistently, that there are people who are interested in this issue, then in some meeting somewhere, they're going to be like, oh yeah, there's this company in my constituency. They told me they had 10 people last year and now they're 20 and they had to buy an extra van and they're growing like crazy. Yeah, that's the type of policy we need. So those are the kinds of things. And it does help. The more noise we make, the more then it rises to the top of the policy radar, and it's competing with all of the other policy radars. So if you like those kinds of policies and you want to see them happen, it's the simplest thing. We do all the work. You don't have to do anything. We just, you just join up and then take action and like you said, 10 to 30 seconds and it's done.
And I got to ask this though, why do people need to care? Like, why is this important in our day and age right now?
It's a good question. Personally, the reason I've been in this since I was 17 years old is, we are at an inflection point right now, I think, where we are facing a very severe planetary crisis. But at the same time, we are also in a very hopeful inflection point. I truly believe that human beings can organize themselves in a completely different way and survive and thrive on this planet with the other species. I believe we can do that. We know what we need to do. We have the technology to do it. We have the intellect to do it as human beings. What we don't have is we don't have a proper political balance or the right approach or the right viewpoint on this from maybe some of the larger corporate players in the world. And what you're seeing is that's changing a lot. So for this sector, why do we want to do this? Well, out of all of the environmental solutions that are out there, saving on energy, being more sustainable with the built environment, better competitiveness and productivity in how we make things, this is the easy one. This is the slam dunk on climate policy. We're going to get to net zero. It's never going to happen without really aggressive and ambitious energy efficiency. But while we do that, we're not losing anything. There's just nothing but gains on this. So we're gaining on climate, we're gaining on jobs, we're gaining on economic output and economic development, we're gaining on comfort and health and resilience. This is the one that should be so easy for us to do. And if that resonates with you out there and you're interested in that, then let's do something about it, because this should be the easy one. And this should be the one where you sat back and said, you know what, like, I am concerned about the way the world's going, but I know we can make a difference. And I'm going to do this one thing in this one little niche because this is the one that can kind of get us going right away. So, join us. And if you like living on this planet and you like your kids living in a livable planet and you care about equity and justice around the world, this is the thing to do right now.
That was very well put. I'm not even going to add anything to that.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for everything that you do. Like this is absolutely amazing. And, knowing that there's people like you out there taking a charge and creating what could be, alone, once again, such a small impact. You're bringing people together to create a huge impact, and being a leader. Thank you for that. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. And thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I love this conversation. Let's do it again sometime.
Absolutely. And yeah, hopefully there'll be more and more updates, right? So let's definitely do it. Before we go though, any last parting words of advice? You just ended with something a really good ask of everyone, but do you have any last parting words of advice? And then end with, if people want to get a hold of you or reach out, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, I think the advice is, I think we're riding some really, really exciting momentum right now. And as I said, I've been doing this for a couple decades. I've never seen the type of momentum and excitement and positive force around climate action ever. And everyone I know who's working in this space is working like as hard as they've ever worked for as long as they've ever worked. And it's really exciting. So if you're one of those and you're part of this movement and part of this, just my only advice is just find it within you to keep going and just keep going and keep this momentum going, because it is a really, really exciting time and there's so much that we can benefit from it. So, you may be tired out there because I know I am, but all I could say is it matters and keep it going. And to get in touch with us, you can just check out efficiencycanada.org, O-R-G, or check out Efficiency Canada on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. We're pretty active on social media. You can find me, Corey Diamond, on LinkedIn. And yeah, we'd love to hear from you and love to connect with you and hear your story and amplify your story as well.
Well, Corey, thank you so much to all the listeners and viewers. We'll make sure to post all those links down below so you can reach out, so you can fill out the form and get on their list so that you can be a part of this huge change. Corey, have an awesome day.
You too, man. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Hope you enjoyed this episode with Corey Diamond and he's inspired you to take action, even if it's just signing up. This is something that's bigger than all of us. This is something that's going to go beyond our lifetime on this earth. This is for our children, our children's children, and so forth. This is a way to give back, and I can't stress that enough. So if you haven't already, hit subscribe, hit the bell button so you get all the updates on all of the videos that we're doing on a weekly basis. We're doing 3 now. We're doing tech update. We are doing interviews like this. We're doing project updates as well. We're answering questions. So we have a lot of things going on here to support and continue to push the sustainable economy. Thanks again, and we'll catch you on the next episode.